Alright, we are back and looking at Bitcoin on the daily chart. You can see the bear flag that we had right here did play out. We had a move into it, so we should expect a move out of it, and that's exactly what happened. I did mention in my previous video we did have a small chance of moving all the way up to 40k, which is sitting around this uptrending level of resistance here. You can see this uptrending level of resistance held Bitcoin up since the end of January all the way to the beginning of May, especially considering we were trading within this previously green box of support. You can see in the past when we have tested this green box of support, or previously green box of support, we have set new all-time highs. So I was expecting a little bit more of a pump here before we move down, but ultimately I did think that we were going to move further down from here. And as you can see here, we really didn't have much of a bounce in this area. You can see it was only around 15%, especially considering, again, these previous tests have sent us to new all-time highs. We should have seen at least a little bit more of a pump here, in my opinion. Taking a look at the EMA ribbon here, you can see we did get rejected from it yet again. Back here on our first test of it, it sent us lower, and you can see on the second test of it, it also sent us lower. Now, it is good that we have been testing this pretty frequently throughout this move to the downside. We really need to see somewhat of a buyback here relatively soon to start testing some of these previous levels of resistance. That way we can find our way back up. The Ichimoku cloud on the daily isn't that much of a concern right now, especially if we can come up here relatively quickly and start testing it to the upside. If not, it's going to start widening, and we could do something like this where we form another bear flag, test the Ichimoku cloud, and find another move down. And that's if the EMA ribbon doesn't do it first. There's not a whole lot to talk about on these smaller time frames. They're all pretty much saying the same thing, bearish breakouts. You can see here when we tested this previous green box of support too many times, we did break it to the downside. I've mentioned in my previous videos that the more often we test zones of resistance or support, the more likely we are to break them. So if we're coming down into support, we test it too many times, we'll eventually break it to the downside. And inversely, if we're coming up into resistance and we test it too many times, we will break it to the upside. Now, the question on everyone's mind, I'm sure, is where are we and if we're at a bottom yet? In my opinion, I think we're either set a bottom already or we're very close to it. And I'll show you why. Here you can see we have tested the 200 weekly moving average and wick below it a little bit. As you can see in the past, we have wick below before, but still managed to find a new bull run. If we switch over to a chart with a little bit more price history, you can see this has been the case throughout the past. We have usually found a bottom around the 200 weekly moving average. You can see we do have some wicks below it for a period of time, but eventually we do start trading back above it and usually set new all-time highs from there. And even if we don't set a new all-time high, it does send us in a substantial rally, as you can see here. We definitely have a potential to come all the way down here at the previous all-time high and retest it at around $19,000, especially considering how the rest of the market's doing. Everyone says that we're going into a recession, so it could bring us down further. But ultimately, what I'd be looking out for is if we close substantially below the 200 weekly moving average, more so than say we have in the past, and then we come up to retest that as resistance and then set a lower low from there. So really be keeping an eye out for something like this. This could end up being really bad if something like this does play out. But as of right now, I'm leaning more towards something like this, where we potentially have a week, or even something back here, where we have a few weeks trading down here within these ranges and having a couple wicks below the 200 weekly before we find another move up. And this is also supported by the fact that the miners have actually started capitulating, which I'll show you here in a second. If we go over here and turn on the hash ribbons, or search for the hash ribbon, should I say, turn them on, and you can actually see here that we're starting to get a little bit of a shaded red area. Now, if you look in the past here, when we've had shaded red areas, this means that miners are capitulating or selling off. Usually after this happens, we get a buy signal and we have a pump, right? So back here, we had another buy signal, we had a pump. Back here, buy signal, pump. Ones back here weren't as accurate per se, as you can see, but we eventually did have a move out of this to the upside. And if we go down to the daily chart here and actually zoom in a little bit, I'm not sure if you can see this. If you look at this little circle right here, just right below it, you can faintly see the words capitulation. Now this capitulation candle happened right here, and you can see ever since we have had a red shaded area, which means that the miners are capitulating or selling off. So again, I definitely think that we're getting very close to a bottom here. We've retested the 200 weekly moving average, which is usually signified a bottom. We're also getting capitulation on the hash ribbons, which usually within a few weeks or months after that, we do see a buy signal and a pump up in the market. Also, if you take a look at the RSI on the weekly, we're currently sitting at 27, which, if I'm not mistaken, this is probably one of the lowest points ever in Bitcoin's history that it's set. So we definitely have a lot of indicators backing up the theory that the bottom is relatively close here. So really to sum things up here, I do think a bottom is coming relatively soon. Now whether we have a wick all the way down to all-time highs and suck back up to the 200 weekly moving average, we'll just have to see. We could even do something like this where we kind of make a falling wedge, which is usually bullish. We'll really just have to see how this plays out. But what I'd be really concerned about is if Bitcoin does something like this, where we come close below the 200 weekly moving average substantially, come back to retest it as resistance and start setting lower lows from there. This is a very, very bad sign if it happens. And if that doesn't happen, then, we're probably at a bottom here. We should be expecting somewhat of a new bull run forming here soon. If we take a quick look at the crypto fear and greed index, you can see we're at 7. Yesterday we were at 8, and we've pretty much been in the low teens for quite some time now. Usually we don't hang out here very long, as you can see in the past, so we definitely have somewhat of a move to the upside coming, whether it be from this bottoming out or just a relief rally before we continue lower. This is all I have for Bitcoin today. If you enjoyed this video, go to the like button. If you haven't subscribed already, go ahead and do so. If you'd like to join the Discord, it'll be linked in the description below. As always, this is not financial advice, and I'll see you in the next one.